Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. Let's jump right in because we are tackling a massive, rapidly evolving topic today. If we really want to understand the future of our daily jobs and the global economy, we can't just look at the shiny software on our screens. We've got to look under the hood. We need to look at the physical, geopolitical hardware actually driving artificial intelligence. So in this explainer, we're going to connect the dots between billions of dollars in silicon chips and the very real human cost of the automation wave that is heading straight for us.
Now, to grasp why this matters right this second, we have to look at the massive tension at the very heart of the AI revolution. On one hand, you've got this incredible promise, right? Unprecedented speed, crazy efficiency, and massive corporate productivity gains. Companies are absolutely racing to implement this tech to save time and money. But on the flip side, we have a very visceral threat. We're looking at the potential disruption or even total automation of up to 300 million full-time jobs globally. 300 million. That is a staggering human reality. And to figure out how we got to this tipping point, well, we need to understand the engine powering the whole thing.
Which brings us to Section 1, the engine of AI, where compute is the new oil. It is so easy to think of artificial intelligence as just invisible magic floating out there in the cloud. But the fundamental reality is entirely physical. Modern AI relies on highly specialized, heavily engineered chips running inside massive, incredibly power-hungry data centers. Without that physical hardware, the software just sits there. It can't function. There's this brilliant analogy from Jonathan Ross, the CEO of an AI chip challenger called Groq. He says, and I quote, "You can think of the model as the car, but it has to run on oil. What we're providing is the compute, which is the new oil." It makes total sense, right? You can have the absolute best AI software model in the world, the flashiest sports car, but if you don't have enough computational fuel, it's not going anywhere. And that is exactly why billions of dollars are just pouring into building these highly specialized AI compute engines. And guys, the sheer speed of these new specialized chips is mind-blowing. For instance, Groq's new chips are tailored specifically for executing AI tasks. That's a process called inference. And they operate roughly 18 times faster than their standard competitors. To really put that into perspective for you, these chips allow large language models to write an entire book in just about 100 seconds. 100 seconds, literally the time it takes to grab a cup of coffee. Imagine trying to compete with a coworker who types that fast. We are moving away from the agonizing, slow dial-up speeds of early AI straight to instantaneous broadband delivery. When a machine can output complex thoughts that quickly, the economic implications are absolutely huge. Moving on to Section 2, the global compute race. Let's look at the geopolitics and the chip ecosystem. So because compute is the new oil, it's not like startups can just pop up out of nowhere and build a chip factory. It requires billions of dollars and incredibly specialized knowledge. The global chip market is actually broken down into three highly specialized players. First, you have the foundries. These are massive manufacturing facilities, places like TSMC in Taiwan, that actually build the physical chips. Second, you've got fabless companies, think of Nvidia or Groq. They brilliantly design the architecture of the chip, but they don't actually manufacture it themselves. And third, you have end-to-end companies like Samsung or Intel, who handle both the design and the manufacturing entirely in-house. It's wild to think about, but a trillion-dollar global economy essentially rests on the shoulders of just a handful of these companies. And right now, there is a very clear heavyweight champion. Nvidia dominates roughly 80% of the advanced AI chip market. 80%. But that remaining 20% slice is heating up fast. Upstarts like Groq are aggressively vying for a piece of the action, and they're securing massive deals with global players, like Saudi Arabia's Aramco, to build vast data centers out in the desert. Everybody wants to control the flow of this new oil. Now, because of this immense power, these chips are highly restricted. Advanced AI chips are classified as dual-use technology, meaning, yes, they can run a commercial chatbot, but they can also simulate nuclear weapons delivery or help design hypersonic missiles. Consequently, the United States has placed heavy bans restricting advanced chips from going to China. Predictably, this has led to reports of underground smuggling networks and actual arrests for intellectual property theft as nations scramble to acquire what they can't get legally. And sitting right in the middle of this incredibly tense geopolitical chessboard is Taiwan's TSMC, the foundry that pretty much the entire globe relies upon for the most advanced manufacturing. Let's turn to Section 3, the automation wave, when compute meets the corporation. Okay, so we've zoomed way out to see the macro geopolitical hardware race. Now, let's zoom back into the micro corporate reality. what exactly happens when all of this incredible, heavily fought-over compute power is actually handed over to corporations. Well, over half of large U.S. firms are planning to use AI to automate tasks within the next year alone. It's all about cutting costs and boosting profits. Let's look at a real-world example from Salesforce to see how this translates. Looking at the traditional workflow side, you have employees wasting a ton of time searching through disparate systems just trying to find knowledge. But on the AI-powered efficiency side, you have 50 AI tools deployed directly to employees, serving up predictive insights instantly. By stripping out all those mundane tasks, Salesforce reported saving a combined 50,000 hours in a single quarter. 50,000 hours. It is an undeniable leap in corporate efficiency. But, it really begs the question, does all this save time mean a 4-day work week for humans? Or does it just mean doing the exact same amount of work with fewer people?
So the crucial point here leads us to a staggering, unavoidable number: 300 million. That is Goldman Sachs' estimate of the equivalent number of full-time jobs that could be automated or heavily disrupted by generative AI around the world. It's a number that sharply grounds this entire explosive tech boom in a very stark, very real human reality.
Which brings us to Section 4, Training Your Replacement, the human cost of efficiency.
For a really long time, people just assumed the jobs most at risk of automation were blue-collar roles, things like long-haul truckers. But with generative AI, everyday office workers, coders, and service personnel are suddenly directly in the crosshairs. Just listen to this profound reality from a New York Times report that was covering call center workers. It says she felt really frustrated because she felt that she was being asked to train her replacement. I mean, try to imagine the visceral, demoralizing, emotional toll of that. You're an everyday employee doing your absolute best to flawlessly execute your customer service job, knowing full well that an AI software running on those lightning-fast chips we talked about earlier is quietly watching your every move, it's analyzing your decisions, and literally learning how to replace you.
Section 5, Pushing for Protection, Adapting to the AI Economy.
So, how are everyday workers and society at large adapting to this unprecedented shift in power, job security, and required skill sets? If entire industries can be compromised by AI chatbots in as little as a year, how do we protect the human element? It brings up this absolutely critical question: who is responsible for retraining the workforce? OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has suggested that government intervention is going to be needed to handle labor market disruptions. But let's be totally clear about what that actually means. The government is us. It means the taxpayer ultimately foots the massive bill for the complex years-long retraining required to turn a displaced worker into, say, a cybersecurity expert or an AI manager.
Fortunately, though, all this anxiety is building into actionable pushback. We are actually seeing a multifaceted response right now to protect the human worker. On the ethical front, there are initiatives like the Rome Call, that's backed by the Vatican and signed by major tech firms, and it prioritizes human dignity in AI development. Then corporately, companies like Cisco are leaning into massive training models, very similar to how they trained 20 million people for the internet age. But honestly, perhaps the most fascinating piece is the worker response. There is a sudden, sharp upswing in private sector labor union momentum. Workers who fear being automated aren't just rolling over and giving up, they're pushing back. They are demanding a collaborative voice and a literal seat at the corporate table before their jobs disappear. They want to be part of the implementation process, not just the victims of it.
Which leaves us with this incredibly provocative final thought. We spend so much time worrying about the automation of everyday workers and middle management, right? But if AI models, powered by these incredibly advanced chips, can now write flawless code, synthesize complex global data instantly, and make rapid, highly optimized business decisions, well, are highly paid CEOs next to be replaced? I mean, just think of the savings on executive severance packages alone. Is any job, even up in the executive boardroom, truly safe from the rapidly advancing engine of AI? I'll leave you to ponder that one. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.